In this week's Parashat Noach, we have the story of the great flood that destroys the world. Mankind had become so evil that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said it's time to start over. We're going to destroy everything. V'Noach matzachen b'nei Adonai. Hashem like Noach, and he saves Noach, and he saves Noach's family and the animals that Noach puts onto the ark. And the whole world is destroyed, and they get saved. And this flood lasts for a while. And towards the end of the flood, Noach begins to see the mountaintops. He's wondering, maybe now it's time to come off. Maybe it's going to be time. Maybe Hashem soon is going to tell me we can leave and start over. So I wanted to speak about the last scenes of the flood story where Noach sends out the birds and speak about it maybe from a little more symbolic perspective. But first, let's talk about the simple shot, what took place. 40 more days had gone by. And Noach opens up the window of the ark that he had made, and he sends out the raven. Okay, that's interesting. The raven, we don't think of, in Western literature, Edgar Allan Poe, the raven is not a good image. In Torah, also the orev, we don't normally think of as the most, happy image. So he sends out the raven. And he goes back and forth, and he's basically, the raven is not leaving the boat. He's not going to go do any kind of job over here. Okay. It's not even so clear why he even sends out the Orev. There's actually one opinion in the Rishonim I saw brought down that Yonah is actually trying to get rid of the Orev for a sin that the Orev did. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, but first this story of the raven. Okay, then the story goes on. Then he sends out a dove. Now we have a job to go see if the water had receded from the ground. But the dove couldn't find anywhere to rest its feet. But the dove couldn't find a place for to put his feet down. So he comes back, and Noach puts out his hand and brings him back into the ark. Now 7 more days go by, and he sends out the dove a second time from the ark. And now the dove comes back erev, towards the evening time. It's getting darker. And he has himself in his mouth. He has an olive leaf. And now Noach understands that the water is beginning to recede. It's decreased from the earth. He waits 7 more days, and he sends them out now the third time, and now the dove does not come back anymore. And now we know that the flood is over, and now eventually the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to say it's time to leave the boat. Okay, so what in the world is going on with this story? What's the story about the raven and the dove? Why is he sending out one bird, a second bird? Like what's really happening over here? So some interesting chazal. So first off, there's one approach in chazal that says the raven had a good ta'ana. He says to Hashem, he says to Noach, he says, I'm not a kosher animal. There's only me and my mate. If I go out there and something happens to me and I die, my species is done with. I'm not going anywhere. As opposed to the dove, which is a kosher species, there's 7 of them. There's 7 pairs of those. If you lose one, it's not going to be so bad. The raven is saying it's not fair what you're doing. Okay, that's one approach. But there's another approach that I actually saw that says he was actually trying to kick out the raven. Why was he trying to kick out the raven? Because the raven sinned. Says the Gemara, it's the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Chet Amud Bet. Says the Gemara, Tano Rabbanan, Shlosha Shimshu Bateva, Vekulam Naku, Kelev, Ve'orev, Ve'cham. He says there were 3 different types of species that had sinned inside the boat, inside the ark, because they didn't follow the halacha. There was a commandment from God not to engage in intercourse on the ark, but these 3 couldn't hold themselves back. The dog, the raven, and Cham, Noach's son Cham, and all 3 of them are going to get punished, ayin the Gemara, for their punishments. So the Orev over here is seen as some of being of sexual immorality and of sexual impurity or ta'ava at the very least. Or we see the 3 of them, the Kelev, the Cham, and the raven are all seen as Baal ta'ava, and therefore they're going to get punished. So I even saw one approach that says he's trying to get rid of the Orev. Okay. But then I saw an idea in Sefer Achishena who tries to take this whole story of Noach and the flood, destruction and the difficulty and being stuck on that ark, waiting for salvation, and take it as a symbolic, kind of like, I guess, like a Maseh Simon Labanim, to the Messianic era, that we're going to be stuck in this terrible galut with all the difficulty, the flood waters, and but eventually, B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to make it out, we're going to make it off the boat, and Hashem is going to save us, Hashem is going to remember us. So if we go back to these 3 images, we mentioned the Kelev. The Kelev in the past, we've actually spoken about being a symbol for Amalek. Now, who was Cham? Cham is the son of Noach who sins. Cham is going to be the father of Canaan as well as Mitzrayim, and we all know that they get the Canaanim, the evil Canaanim. These are also going to be these nations that are going to be seeped in Gilui Arayot and sexual immorality. But we also know Mitzrayim. That's going to be Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, is going to come from Mitzrayim. So again, this the Ham line is this Ishmael line. The Caleb we mentioned, Amalek, is this joining together of Ishmael and Esav, another different the terrible force. Who is the Orev? Okay, so if you open up the Maharsha. This is the Maharsha on one of the mythical stories of Abba Bar Chana in Bava Batra, Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Bet. There's a story speaking about a frog and a tanin, and in the story over there, there's an Orev, there's a raven. And the Maharsha over there explains that the raven over there is a symbol for Yishmael, the evil nation Yishmael that's going to try to really destroy the Jewish people. That's the Orev, that's the raven in that story over there. So says Sefer Achishera, this is from Daf Kuf Nun Aleph until Daf Kuf Nun Hey. He takes this idea of the Maharsha, that the raven, that this Orev is Yishmael, and then relearns the whole story symbolically of the raven being a symbol for Yishmael, while the dove being the classic, the Yonah, being the classic symbol for the Jewish people. And he says as follows, okay. Now, we had actually mentioned in the past that we have the koach of Esav, one of the enemies of the Jewish people. Esav comes with the fire, and he's the one that's going to burn down the Beit HaMikdash with Esh, while the koach of Yishmael has always been with water, as we know that Avram's going to save him with the water, but ultimately the Malachim said, why are you saving him with the water? Yishmael is going to kill us with the water, with the empty water canteens. When we're off to Galut, instead of giving us thirsty Jews the water to drink, he gave us these canteens filled with hot air that ultimately leads to our death. So Yishmael's koach is with the water. So therefore, says Sefer Achishera, the symbolism of the flood is the final galut of Yishmael, and it's going to be all the suffering that we're going to feel under Yishmael. This flood that we're going to see. We're going to feel like we're stuck. We're on this boat. There's nowhere to get off. There's nowhere for our feet to land. We're just being toppled and turning all over in this ocean of the flood of Yishmael. But Noach is hoping for the Messianic era. He's beginning to see the mountaintops. He's beginning to see the salvation happening. So what does he do? He tries to send away the Orev. And now, like the Maharsha says, the Orev is Ishmael. He's trying to send away the symbolic Ishmael. Stop bothering us. But the raven won't leave. It's going to circle and circle and keep coming back. It won't leave us alone. So then he's going to try, okay, you know what? Let's send out the Yonah. Let's send out Am Yisrael. We're going to try to get away. Let's try to find our place. But the Galut is long. And the first time he sends out the Yonah, the first time the dove goes out, it comes back. There's nowhere, lo matzah manoach. There's nowhere for the feet to rest. The pain of Jewish exile. We're always going to be moving around. We're always going to be. There's nowhere to rest. And then 7 days go by, and I believe the 7 days is probably a symbolic Shemitah cycle, much symbolic of bigger periods of time. And then he says, okay, now I'm going to send them out a second time. And now the Yonah comes back. But when does he come back? The Yonah comes back, le'et erev, v'hine ale zayit tarah befiyah. It comes back towards the Erev. It's even darker. The Galut's going to get darker and darker. Just when you think the Galut couldn't get any darker, now we're getting Le'et Erev. We're getting to the more difficult time. It's getting even darker. Now, what's the language of Erev? It says Sefer Achishera, Erev is the language of Eruv, of Erev Rav, that evil nation. It's also the language of the Aravi, the Galut Yishmael. Le'et Erev, it's still dark. We have the Aravi. We're fighting against the Arab world that's attacking us. It's the Galut Yishmael. But ultimately, the Yonah is going to come back with the Aleh Zayit, with the olive branch. What is the olive branch? The olive is the symbol of Mashiach ben David. As David HaMelech says about himself in Tehillim, Va'ani kizayit ra'anan bevet Elohim. He says, I am like the olive tree in God's house, meaning David HaMelech compares himself to the olive branch. So eventually, La'et Erev, when the Erev gets the strongest, the Aravi gets the strongest, we think it can't get any darker, that's the point when Mashiach is going to come. Mashiach ben David is going to come with the olive branch, and we're going to realize at that point the water is gone, the flood is over, and we're going to come off the boat, and Hashem is going to remember us. Shabbat Shalom.